I came to realize this at the recent dinner party. What matters most in food isn't just the taste, but also when, where, and with whom you eat that matters. Mike's mother, Linda, glared at me and spat out her words.
We don't need you here. Get lost, you poor thing.
That's exactly what I wanted. I no longer want to be with these people. I tried to save face for an acquaintance, but I've had enough. All right, got it. Excuse me, but before I go, I signaled the waitress, and soon someone important showed up. He was the person in charge of this high-end restaurant. His expression was stern. I briefly explained the situation.
Your bill comes to $30,000.
Mike and his family were disappointed, but we remained calm. We were determined to drag this family down to rock bottom. That's all I had left in my heart. My name is Amy. I'm 30 years old. I work in the kitchen of an Italian restaurant. My dream is to own my own restaurant. To achieve that, I work hard every day and night. I got interested in cooking because my father, Andy, runs a restaurant. His cooking is highly praised by many customers. I want to have my own place and showcase my skills like my father. I've had this dream since I was very young and have been working towards it. I decided to keep some distance from my family to stand on my own. My father praised my decision without hesitation.
That's very brave. I'll support you, Amy. But if things get tough, come to me right away. I'll always be there to help, no matter what.
His restaurant is also used for gatherings of big company presidents. Recently, one of those presidents, Kevin, who runs a trading company, had a request. His company's manager's son was looking for a girlfriend, and he asked if I'd meet him. Since it was a request from a regular customer, I couldn't refuse, so I decided to meet him. Mike was a decent-looking trading company employee, but he had issues in his personality. I remember thinking he wasn't my type when I first met him.
Hey, how many guys do you know who'd pick you up in a fancy car on the first date?
I don't know. Maybe no one else.
Where should we go? Actually, I already planned our date. Come on, get in.
Mike loved bragging about his wealth. Everything he wore and drove was a designer good. He listed all the benefits of dating him.
If you go out with me, you'll never have to worry about money. My dad is a manager at a big trading company, and I work there too. Soon, I'll get promoted and lead a team.
He talked nonstop about himself. I was overwhelmed. I couldn't believe there were men like him. Back in culinary school, the men around me were all dedicated. We recognized each other as rivals and worked hard to improve, surrounded by cool guys. But what about Mike? He had nothing impressive to show for himself yet kept bragging. All he was saying was that his family was wealthy. I was so fed up that my attitude naturally turned cold. But Mike was thrilled by it and told me that I was a type he never met before. Eventually, we agreed to meet again on another day. A few weeks later, on the day of our second date, I found myself dealing with an unexpected person. Mike's sister, Karen, showed up and started sizing me up.
Hi there. I asked my brother if I could tag along. Want to know why? To learn about my future sister-in-law. Of course, I want to know what kind of person you are.
Maybe so. Nice to meet you. By this point, I was completely turned off. I couldn't believe I had to go on a date with his sister. Mike seemed unfazed, but was this normal for him? In short, Karen was a nasty woman. She looked down on my appearance and behavior, asserting her superiority. Basically, she was just like Mike. She was also the type person who feels good by belittling others.
Amy, what brand is that outfit? I think I'm pretty knowledgeable about clothes, but I've never seen it before.
This is handmade. A friend of mine is really good at it, so sometimes we make things together from scratch.
Handmade? No way. Are you poor, Amy?
Hey now, Karen. Don't say it like that. Amy's dad is a chef, and I've heard he's quite skilled. I don't know where he works, though.
Isn't it some downtown shop?
Karen said that and laughed. I had no idea what was so funny. Even in downtown shops, there are plenty of chefs who serve excellent dishes. Clearly, Mike and Karen's values and way of thinking were completely different from mine. It's true that I wasn't dressed up in anything special. I knew I wasn't dressed up or wearing brand name clothes. I lived modestly. But that's because I'm self-sufficient and saving for my goal. I didn't want to be looked down on by someone living off their parents without working. Did I enjoy that date? No way. Absolutely not. The only ones having fun were the nasty siblings who kept belittling me. Kevin, who introduced me to Mike, was one of the investors in my dad's restaurant. So, ending my relationship with Mike required some preparation. I didn't want Kevin to think I was a stuck-up woman by turning Mike down for a flimsy reason. One day, Mike invited me to his parents' house. He had gotten some rare ingredients and wanted to show me.
Amy, you said you wanted to own a restaurant, right? You might be interested in these rare ingredients.
Thanks, I'll take you up on that. On the day, I visited Mike's parents' house and was dismayed. The house was ostentatiously decorated, reflecting their nouveau rich taste. However, the ingredients Linda had sourced were indeed rare and intriguing. Wow! Hawaiian sea asparagus, Brazilian vicunho peppers, Italian erba stella.
That's right. Impressive, huh? Whenever we get rare items like these, the neighbors flock to see them.
Linda's attitude was even worse than Mike and Karen's. She was addicted to flaunting her wealth, and everything she said and did annoyed me. Moreover, based on what she heard about me, she completely treated me like a poor person.
If you want, I can give you some of these ingredients.
Thanks.
You'd be happy to save a little on food costs, right? Though I can't really understand that feeling. Helping poor people feels so good.
Linda continued, leaving me stunned. What kind of life leads someone to be so arrogant? However, Linda's husband, John, had an even worse attitude. He lounged around like some kind of lord, acting as if he owned the place. On top of that, he was quite lecherous, openly staring at my chest and backside. Linda, Mike, and Karen all seemed to notice but didn't say anything. It appeared John completely controlled his family with money.
So, you want to own your restaurant one day. Your dad is a chef and owns a place, right? Don't you want to take over?
I have no interest in my dad's restaurant. I want to own my place.
You should just take over your parent place. Why go through unnecessary hardships? As a chef, why don't you cook something?
As John requested, I found myself in the kitchen. I was using those rare ingredients. I had never seen some of those before. I somehow managed to create a few satisfactory dishes. The four of them began eating without saying grace. John nodded.
Not bad. It's pretty good.
Considering it's her first time using these ingredients, it's impressive, don't you think?
It's just average. Anyone could do it.
Well, we could keep her as a housemaid.
They all laughed loudly. Did I come here just to be insulted? John, Linda, Mike, and Karen were beyond my comprehension. I decided to complain to Kevin about all these unpleasant experiences to end the relationship smoothly. As they laughed, I made up my mind. That's what happened. They're really awful people, right? That night, I returned to my parents' house for the first time in a while. I wanted to tell my father about my interactions with Mike and his family. My dad looked completely taken aback. He crossed his arms and groaned.
We have all kinds of regulars, but I've never met anyone who brags about their wealth like that.
Me neither. I can't continue this relationship, and marriage is out of the question. I absolutely don't want to marry him. But Kevin introduced me to Mike.
Are you saying it's hard to refuse? Are you worried about the impact on our restaurant? If that's the case, don't worry about it, Amy. My restaurant will be fine. There's no need for my daughter to worry about anything. What's more important is your happiness.
My dad's words blew away my doubts.
By the way, Mike's dad, John, has been to our restaurant before.
Really? Did he just forget?
Probably. You should bring him to the restaurant sometime. And if you continue the relationship, it's important to thoroughly assess him.
Following my dad's advice, I decided to investigate Mike thoroughly. I looked into his education, career, and social connections, things I had previously ignored. As a result, I discovered some shocking truths about Mike and his family. There was no way I could tie my life to these people. So, I decided to end the relationship definitively at some point. The opportunity came a few days later. Mike asked me to arrange a dinner party. From the way he talked, it seemed he intended to propose to me in front of his family. I don't know what he liked about me, but frankly, it was a huge nuisance. Still, it was a good opportunity. I decided to end the relationship in front of his family. I booked the restaurant as instructed, prepared thoroughly, and waited for the day.
This restaurant is not bad, especially for those on a budget.
This place is sometimes used for company dinners. The food is excellent. Karen, eat more.
I wanted Italian. Amy, you really have no sense, do you?
Come on, Karen. You said you didn't care where we went, remember?
Mike and his family seemed to be having a great time. He was drunk and finally mentioned our engagement. He said he liked me and wanted to make me his wife. I immediately stopped him. There was no way I was getting engaged. I'm sorry, but I have no intention of getting engaged. I came here to end our relationship.
What? What are you saying all of a sudden?
Linda's expression changed at my words. She seemed angry that her son, Mike, was being dumped right in front of her. She laughed sarcastically and told me that I had no right to choose.
A rude and ignorant person like you? We don't need you. Go home, poor girl.
What matters most in food isn't just the taste, but also when, where, and with whom you eat that matters. This dinner party made me realize that deeply. Go home, gladly. I no longer wanted to be with these people. All right, got it. Excuse me, but before I go, I signaled the waitress, and someone soon came over. He was the person in charge of this high-end restaurant. His expression was stern. I briefly explained the situation.
The bill is $30,000.
What? $30,000? What the hell is this? Who do you think you are?
This is my father, Andy.
What?
Mike and his family were speechless. They didn't expect my father to be working at such a high-end restaurant. In this restaurant, my father is the head chef, and my mother manages the entire business. Karen treated me like a poor person, but my family is much more respectable than Mike's. It only seemed like I wasn't wealthy because I was trying to achieve my dreams on my own. My father gave a brief introduction, but his eyes were clearly filled with hostility.
I was curious about the man my daughter was dating, so I did some investigating. Mike, you seem to be quite a terrible person.
What? What are you talking about?
You're currently cheating, aren't you? You're involved with 2 other women besides my daughter.
Mike fell silent. Actually, my father and I had hired a private investigator to look into Mike and his family. The results were disastrous. There was no way I could tie my life to these people.
So, why don't you be honest? Maybe your family didn't even know.
Mike, is it true? Mom, did you know?
I didn't know. How about you, John?
Well, actually, I did know. He came to me for advice. I told him to be careful, but Mike.
It turns out that Mike had once gotten a woman he dated pregnant. At that time, he secretly consulted John, who urged the woman to have an abortion. Mike didn't take responsibility himself and let John pay her off to settle the matter. When I mentioned this, Linda and Karen's eyes widened in shock.
Did you force her to have an abortion? Seriously?
You made her do that? Why didn't you tell us? You idiot.
Sorry, but I thought you'd both be mad if I told you.
Of course we'd be mad. What do you think life is? Unbelievable.
Karen berated Mike, but she wasn't in a position to criticize others. My father and I also pointed out Karen's faults. Her behavior was quite appalling too.
Karen, can you really criticize your brother? You've been playing around with multiple guys, haven't you? Unfortunately, they all seem to be just nightlife friends.
Nightlife. Karen, are you still involved in that? Hand over the credit card right now. I won't allow this anymore.
What? No way. How am I supposed to pay without the card?
Karen was unemployed and had no intention of working. She planned to keep living off her parents. From my perspective, it is unbelievable that I am focused on self-reliance. My father didn't spare any mercy on Karen either.
Karen, you need to have more self-discipline. Do you know what your nightlife friends call you behind your back? I'm sure you don't.
What? I don't know. What do they call me?
They call you Sugar Mommy.
That's a lie. I don't believe it.
Unfortunately, it's true. The hosts call Karen Sugar Mommy because she's chubby and spends a lot of money. Our private investigator found this out thoroughly, so there's no mistake. Alex, Michael, Daniel.
Those are.
The names of your nightlife friends. They all call you Money Pig. Maybe you should check next time you go to the club.
No, stop it. I don't believe you. They all care about me. They wouldn't say such things. I won't believe it.
Karen's eyes were bloodshot. Linda hugged and comforted her distressed daughter. Linda looked regretful.
Nightlife isn't worth it. Relationships bought with money never last. Didn't I tell you to build genuine connections with people?
Excuse me, but it seems you also haven't built proper relationships with those around you, Linda.
What? That's not true. I've done nothing wrong. Stop making baseless accusations.
It's not an accusation. It's based on thorough investigation. You can't criticize your children either.
Linda considered herself a community leader, but in reality, she was disliked by her neighbors. Apparently, she was completely unaware of this. Her face showed utter disbelief. How clueless could she be?
You're always bragging, just like your children. Your neighbors seem to think so too. Have you really never realized it until now?
But that can't be true. During community cleanups, at neighborhood meetings, everyone is always friendly. We even have tea parties.
Those tea parties are very unpopular. You might want to cut back. The neighbors all say they'd rather not go anymore.
Stop it. Don't make things up.
Linda was just like Karen. She didn't want to accept the truth. Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Johnson, Mrs. Davis, Mrs. Clark, and Mrs. Brown. I listed the names of Linda's acquaintances who had cooperated with the investigation. Linda's face twisted in shock. She might have felt betrayed.
It's a lie. We're all friends.
That's just on the surface. Behind your back, they all call you an obnoxious, bragging rich lady.
Maintaining relationships with neighbors is hard. You must have gone too far. You should have known better. You bragged too much, didn't you?
Linda broke down in tears. She didn't respond at all. The people she thought were her friends, but actually they weren't. She seemed deeply shocked by this and looked dejected. John spat out.
You're all just a bunch of fools, and all useless. I've told you to get it together. How can you let a few words get to you?
He was still acting like the head of the family. He seemed to think he was the pillar supporting this extravagant spendthrift family. Even now, John was proud. He acted as if his family's shortcomings had nothing to do with him. He seemed to take pride in supporting his spoiled, spendthrift family. Maybe that pride is what made him so arrogant. But even John was in no position to criticize his family.
You act like you've done nothing wrong, but that's not true, is it? You're the one who should be most blamed here, John.
What? What did I do? I've done nothing shameful to anyone.
It's bold of you to say that, especially when you harass the waitresses every time you come here.
What?
Under my father's glare, John immediately shrank. He clearly knew what he had done. The other three were bewildered. My father was right. John harassed the waitresses whenever he visited. He touched their bodies, sniffed their hair, and tried to hug them against their will.
You probably don't know how many complaints we've received from the waitresses. Some even quit because of you.
I'm sorry.
John, what did you do to the waitresses here? Tell the truth.
He touched them, tried to pay for favors, and caused them a lot of emotional distress.
Linda, Mike, and Karen were all stunned. They were shocked to learn the truth about the head of their family. My father didn't ease up on his pursuit.
If you like, we can show you the video footage capturing the moment you harassed the waitresses. The security cameras recorded you pushing them down.
Wait, please don't. I was drunk. I'm truly sorry.
The $30,000 I mentioned earlier includes compensation for the waitresses. I hope you'll consider it positively.
Yes, I understand. I'm very sorry.
Mike and his family were in shambles. They must have wished they hadn't come. Their cheerful demeanor at the beginning of the meal was completely gone. But my father and I had no intention of letting them off so easily. You've mocked me enough. If you think it ends here, you're dead wrong. I will tell Kevin everything, like the results of this investigation and the insults you hurled at me. Be prepared.
To Kevin? No, please. That would be a disaster. Please, anything but that.
Yes, I'm sure it would be a problem for you, but I have to fulfill my obligation. I need to explain to Kevin why I rejected Mike.
I'll call the president myself. Amy, You don't need to do anything. Please.
John was vigorously nodding in agreement with Mike. They had too many secrets they didn't want to be revealed. What a disgraceful family. My father let out a big sigh. No wonder. We knew an even bigger secret about John. Something just as unforgivable as his harassment of the waitresses happened.
John, you should just come clean and pay for your crimes. It's for your sake and your family's.
What crimes?
Don't play dumb. It's useless to hide. Our excellent private investigators uncovered everything. You've been collecting money through illegal means, haven't you? John's face turned pale. He didn't expect us to know that much. The investigators my father hired were thorough. There was no doubt that John had committed crimes. His accomplice was a department manager from a related company. The two colluded to inflate invoices and had been lining their pockets for years.
Just the other day, that department manager came here for dinner. When confronted, he confessed everything.
What? That guy. He never said anything to me.
It was just the other day, and I made sure he wouldn't tell you. You've been overcharging for quite a long time, haven't you? I wonder how much damage you've caused the company.
Kevin will surely be furious when he finds out. John began to shake uncontrollably. He was probably imagining what would happen if the president found out. If the truth came out, John would definitely face consequences. He wouldn't remain a department manager. He might even get fired. Actually, he'd almost certainly be fired. And then the family's end would come. They'd likely be sued for damages. The amount would be unimaginable.
I'm very sorry. I beg you, please.
Suddenly, John apologized deeply to my father and me. He was hoping to gain our forgiveness and save himself. How pathetic. It made me feel sick. John was unaware of my disgust, and he forced the other three to apologize deeply as well. This disgraceful family kept apologizing deeply.
I'm sorry for the rude things we said to your daughter. I'll scold my wife and children. So please, forgive us.
Forgive you? What do you mean? Are you asking us not to report this to Kevin?
Yes, that would be helpful.
You must be joking. Are you asking us to become accomplices in your crimes? That's beyond unreasonable. Mike pleaded with me, Amy. He seemed to want to remind me of our relationship, but I ignored him completely. Listening to anything Mike had to say was pointless. The best thing was to give him no attention at all. You treated me like a poor person with your arrogant attitude. You were saying you'd keep me as a maid. I haven't forgotten the humiliation of that day.
We didn't know anything at the time. If we had known you were the daughter of such a prestigious restaurant owner.
And if you had known, then what? Would you have changed your attitude? I can't agree with judging people based on their status. It disgusts me.
Amy, I'm really sorry. I've reflected on my actions. I won't call you a maid or a poor person again. I want to start over. I'll devote myself to you. So please.
Mike's words didn't resonate with me at all. They were obviously just saying those to get out of this situation. Mike never stopped his family from mocking me. Sometimes he even joined in. Marrying him. The thought repulsed me. There was no way I'd do that.
Now that I know about your crimes, I have a duty to report them. Of course, I'll also inform Kevin.
John, you better prepare yourself.
That's all I have to say. Now, would you all please leave? I have a lot of calls to make.
Wait, please, I beg you. I'll give you money. Anything you want.
John's tearful face was pathetic. It was revolting to see. He knew that if his crimes were exposed, he would be finished, and he understood that all too well. Linda, Mike, and Karen all looked lost and helpless.
Enough. Stop being so stubborn. I can call the police right now.
I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
John didn't move until my father yelled at him. He paid the full bill and apologized again in shame. Poor John, and the foolish family that relied entirely on his money. The four of them trudged away, looking like condemned souls headed for hell. Afterward, my father informed the president, Kevin, about John. Kevin was furious and had John confess the facts at an executive meeting. My father also reported it to the police, leading to an investigation of the company. As a result, John was arrested for embezzlement. The department manager who colluded with him was also arrested. They had been overcharging for 15 years. Some employees were amazed it hadn't come to light sooner. The damages were significant, amounting to tens of thousands of dollars. John cried when he received the demand for compensation. With the family's breadwinner gone, Mike and Karen could no longer spend freely. The damage to Mike, who worked at the same company, was immense. After his father was arrested, he couldn't bear the shame and resigned. Karen couldn't repay the money she borrowed and had to sell her branded goods. It wasn't enough, and without her parents' credit cards, she borrowed money from loan sharks. She now works part-time, barely sleeping, to pay off her debt. I hope she realizes this is the price for her reckless lifestyle. Linda, as the wife of a criminal, lives in shame. She couldn't greet her neighbors or go out shopping anymore. It was surprising to me that even she could feel shame. John suffered the most financially. In addition to the company's compensation, he had to pay $30,000 to the waitresses he harassed. 2 waitresses were victims of John's harassment. Sadly, one of them suffered emotional trauma and still receives psychiatric treatment. John's crimes are serious. He needs to reflect deeply on his actions. As John got arrested, Mike and his family began a downward spiral. About a year later, they sold their big, boastful house and land and moved far away. A few years later, I finally achieved my dream and opened my own restaurant. I started managing a creative cuisine restaurant that uses seasonal ingredients. Thanks to everyone's support, the restaurant is thriving. Sales increase steadily every month. This success is thanks to my excellent staff and the management consultant my father recommended. In fact, I have a good personal relationship with this consultant. In the future, I want to focus not only on the growth of the restaurant, but also on the fulfillment of my own life, which I have neglected. I plan to live in a way that ensures my happiness, so my father won't have to worry.